Dave Weinberg from the Press of Atlantic City has covered a couple of Super Bowls with the Eagles in it, but never one that they won. And he was there in Minnesota. And, Dave, what a whirlwind of a week that ended with maybe the most improbable, the Eagles beating the New England Patriots 41-33 with Nick Foles, the MVP. And I talked about this 2 weeks ago, in that in 2013, this kid had a fairy tale season, but the fairy tale never ended. They never put the period at the end of that sentence until Sunday night. That kid has gone on such a whirlwind over the last 4 or 5 years, but the way that he played, you can officially say the Eagles won the Super Bowl because Nick Foles was their quarterback.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he went above and beyond, really. It was. I mean, I told people, when he first took over for Carson, that the drop-off wasn't going to be as big as what people thought, but I'd never expected him to play the way he played, against the Patriots. It was just a tremendous performance all around. I mean, throwing passes, catching touchdowns. It was just, he did it all except, give out the water during the timeouts.
Well, that's not verified that he didn't do that at some point. But
this is true. This is true.
We do know that he had input on some of the play calls, including that fourth down play where we saw it inside the NFL. He goes over to Coach, says, Philly, Philly, and Coach Pederson looks at him and says, all right, let's do it. But, I mean, that there kind of shows the confidence that Foles had been playing with. It's something that he didn't display in some of those regular season games.
No, he was kind of feeling his oats a little bit, I think, down the stretch after initially when he took over for Carson. It took him time to get in sync with the receivers, just to get a feel of playing football again. It had been so long. He didn't even play in the preseason, so it had been a while since he had even taken a snap in a game. So, he gradually got his feet under him a little bit, seemed to get a bit of a better rapport with Alshon Jeffrey, Zach Ertz, and those guys, and you saw the benefits of that on Sunday.
Yeah, and one thing is for sure, Doug Peterson's message today was, let's get used to this. This is the new norm in Philadelphia, and that message seems to be rubbing off on this roster and this group of guys, that they believe, because of Doug, that this is something that shouldn't be just a one-year thing.
Yeah, I mean, they're all in on him. They have been since the very beginning, really. And he's done a great job of getting that message across. Howie Roseman's locked up, a lot of the key players for the long term. And, there's no reason to think that they can't keep this thing rolling for a little bit. I mean, granted, you never know. I mean, there's always, teams that think they're going to go on a long run, and then, adversity happens and it doesn't turn out that way. But they're really set up to make a pretty good run at this, I think.
Dave, first of all, my grandma wants to say thank you because you did pick the Eagles to win. A lot of people don't remember that, but you did do that.
All right, I said you're welcome.
So I'm not going to ask you the cliche question, which is, is this the, craziest season that you've seen all time, that culminated in a championship of all proportions, blah, blah, blah. But this season did have its ups and downs, literally, where you have your second-year quarterback looking like a stud. He gets hurt, and then the guy you drafted all those years ago, 2 regimes ago, comes in and wins you a Super Bowl. I mean, Dave, you've covered this team for years. Just talk about how, the roller coaster ride of this season has gone.
Yeah, it's been unbelievable, quite frankly. I mean, you not only with Carson going down, but Jason Peters and Darren Sproles. And, it seemed like every time they were ready to get their momentum going a little bit, then another player would get hurt, Jordan Hicks or Caleb Sturgis or Chris Maragos. I mean, it was just one right after another. And for them they just held it together. A lot of people kind of jumped off the bandwagon a little bit, especially down the end of the regular season. But when you got Doug Peterson as the driver, he's proven that, he can get a job. He can get the job done no matter who's out there. And the players bought into that message. They always, I know it's cliche, but they really believe in that next man up mentality. And that's what you saw happen on Sunday against the Patriots.
Dave, listen, you're going to get this question a lot. Everyone's getting this question about the Nick Foles, Carson Wentz quarterback fiasco. I, maintain the position.
I wouldn't call it a fiasco.
Well, the good fiasco. I maintain that you don't trade Nick Foles unless you get what you ask for, whether it be 2 firsts, 3 firsts, whatever you want, because you have him under contract. And things happen in this league. Injuries in training camp. People don't get who they won the draft. People don't get who they won free agency. Am I crazy for taking that stance? Because you have all the leverage. He's under contract. He's not going to gripe.
No, I don't know if you read my column today, but you do not trade Nick Foles. And I've heard some other journalists speculating otherwise, but to me it makes no sense. And all due respect to Jason Avant, this is a completely different situation. I mean, Jeff Garcia was he wanted to play and he wanted to do whatever he could to kind of force their hands. Nick is not doing that. He signed with the Eagles this year to be the backup, and it so happened that he gave a terrific performance. But it's very clear to me, and it should be clear to everybody else, Carson Wentz is the Eagles quarterback, and that's clear to Nick too. And I don't see him, complaining or moaning about wanting another deal or wanting to leave. I mean, he's very comfortable here. There's a reason why he signed back here. He had other offers to maybe contend for a starting job.
So, Dave, even if they offer first-round picks and all that, you hold on to Nick? You don't even take first-round picks or something like that?
I do not trade Nick Foles. You don't know when Carson's coming back. You don't know what's going to happen when he does come back. You don't want Nate Sudfeld as the guy in there when you really need to win a game. I don't think.
Okay.
I want Nick Foles if I'm Doug Pederson. Right. Well, I do not trade him.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of it though comes down to what do the Eagles think about Sudfeld? Because I compared this to when they traded Jordan Matthews. They don't trade Jordan Matthews if they think Aguilar is the guy that he was the first 2 years. They had to have said, you know what, we think this guy can play. Go ahead and move him. So if Howie gets in the room with DiFilippo and Reich and Pederson and says, do you guys trust Nate Sudfeld? And they say yes, then I think Howie picks up the phone.
You pick up the phone, but then you hang it up. You're talking about there's a big difference between Nelson Aguilar, who had played 2 years, and Nate Sudfeld has played maybe 2 minutes.
Agree.
He did real well against the Cowboys, but so what? I don't know. I'm not doing it. Sorry.
Hey, look, and I don't know that there is. I think it would be hard if Carson looks like he's on track to play, and someone's on the phone with you and says, hey, we're going to give you the 15th pick in the draft, and you're at 32, and now because the thought in the back of my mind, being somebody who looked at all angles here and says, look, the one thing I remember from the last championship in town was the Phillies held on to that team too long. If they could have moved those guys ahead of time, maybe they wouldn't have gone through 5-6 years of hell. If the Eagles can get something for a guy who might not take a snap next year, especially a high first-round, mid-first-round pick, you have to consider it, right?
I don't. I mean, I can understand that thinking, but I just don't. To be honest with you, I'm not sure Foles would do it. I think he might retire rather than do that.
Okay.
I just don't. I think he's really. I mean, he's really happy here and very content with his life both on the team and outside the team. And if he's not having a problem with being the backup, I don't know why anybody else would.
And I can see that point of view, unless you're Howie Roseman and you're the guy on the phone that gets the phone call that says, hey, this is the Arizona Cardinals. We've got the 15th pick, or I don't know what pick they have, but I think they're around there. 15. We're interested in Nick Foles. Anything there, Howie? I mean, Howie's the one guy who's got the push on him. There's a lot of other decisions they have to make this offseason. That's neither here nor there. But the one big thing is, what do you think about the offense with Foles and Wentz? They were different offenses, and some of the things was it seemed that Pederson did such a good job. Guys like Nelson Aguilar, Avant brought this up earlier. He used him as an example, as a guy who he put him in the position that he thought he was going to succeed in, rather than saying, hey, you were a first-round pick, we got to play you on the outside. He moved him into the inside. But did you think the Foles offense was a better fit for their personnel?
Oh, I don't know about that. They were putting up 30 on everybody with Carson in there, too.
Okay.
I just think Doug does a very good job of.
Well, a lot of that was, too, though. Wentz was. A lot of that is Wentz is so good at improvising and keeping plays alive. I thought the difference was, instead of having Foles improvise, Pederson was the one who improvised.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I think, like I said, he does a very good job of making the most of what he has in front of him. He's willing to to his credit, he's not one of those guys who just it's my way or the highway, and very set in what he's going to do. He gets input from the players. He looks at what he has and designs things for them. Like, I'm not so sure that they call that play if Carson is the quarterback instead of, well, I mean, they might have anyway. I don't know, but I just and give credit to Doug for going back to looking at the tapes of 2013, meeting with Nick, finding out what he's most comfortable doing, what he doesn't feel so comfortable doing, and adjusting the offense accordingly. I thought you're right. I think Doug did a tremendous job of adjusting to the situation.
Yeah, and some of the things he said today in the press conference I thought were really eye-opening in that, I mean, you can pick out any number of things that he said today and really say this guy gets it. But, the fact that he said, look, that if I'm doing speaking engagements, that means I'm not focused on winning the next one. So I can't, he seems that this is the new norm is what he said. This is what he wants this team to be. He wants this team to be set up for the long run. And it sounds as if that's what he is certainly got his mindset on, because he sounds like the kind of guy that's already saying, how do we get better and how do we start making the run for next year?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, they'll have their time to celebrate, but it won't be a long time. You'll see Doug at the NFL Combine before too long, and, looking at the potential draft picks and potential free agent pickups and that kind of stuff. He's not one to celebrate, really. I mean, except for his love of ice cream, that's about it seems like. So he's very committed to his job. He's very dedicated to it, and he's expecting the same thing out of the players too.
Dave, you've been around this team for a long, long time. So I'll ask you, I think the Brandon Graham strip sack might be the most important play in the history of the franchise. How about you?
Yeah. You might be right there, because if he doesn't make that, I mean, I got to be honest. When Tom Brady gets back on the field and there's 2+ minutes left, I'm thinking the Patriots are winning this game.
You and everybody else.
So, you're not alone, Dave. I cried after he got that strip sack because I knew I knew it was going to happen. When that play happened, I knew it was going to happen.
Yeah, I think you're right there. Even the Hail Mary, Amendola almost caught that. So, but yeah, I think you might be right there. I mean, it's certainly up there with one of the most important plays in franchise history. That's for sure.
Right. I know the Philly play will be the one that's more memorable, but I don't know that it was more important.
Right. You're true. That's true. You can point out to a few plays, though. I mean, I thought Patrick Robinson's pick six against Minnesota, that completely turned the momentum around, I thought. And, yeah, like I said, I know other people have talked about it, but Jake Elliott's 61-yard field goal, that seemed to really be the one that kind of swung the momentum towards the Eagles. I mean, if they lose to the Giants there, I'm not so sure they're celebrating today.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's the point we made throughout the season, too, was that kick there got them off on their run and put the Giants, in misery the rest of the year there. You also had, I mean, how about the throw that Foles made to Jeffrey, 51 yards to start the scoring? I mean, Jeffrey, who they signed to he makes an unbelievable catch, but the throw is even better.
Yeah, I mean, Nick was really, really in the zone in the Super Bowl, and for a quarterback to not play most of the year and to perform at his best on the biggest stage, I mean, that just shows so much about him, his character, his confidence, his ability. I was thoroughly impressed with what he did.
Couple news and notes real quick. It looks like Reich's going to interview with the Colts and DeFilippo with the Vikings. How big of a loss would it be to lose one or both of those guys? Because a lot of times we saw Andy, when he started to lose guys, he started to drop off a little bit. I mean, when the guys started to get plucked is when they started to fall apart a little bit. And I feel like we feel that Pederson is maybe more equipped to continue to build by himself maybe, but we don't know how much influence those guys particularly have. I guess that will be found out once he leaves. But if he loses them in 1 year, one big swoop like that, that would be interesting.
Yeah, it would be. It would be a tough loss. I think no disrespect to Frank, but I think that John would be the bigger one because he's had such an influence over both Carson and Nick and developing them that I think you had probably mentioned it before that, I think they wait and see. If Frank takes the Colts job, then I think they do everything they can to keep John, maybe make him the offensive coordinator.
All right, Dave Weinberg from the Press of Atlantic City. I know, the 01 to about 09, those years, you probably had a ton of readership and a ton of interaction, but was this last 2 weeks maybe the most interaction and intense that it's ever been covering this team?
Oh, yeah, both positive and negatives because of my pick for the NFC Championship game. But, yeah, it's, people have really caught the fever. They've really been into it. They've been following my coverage both online and in the paper. I get a ton of text messages, emails, tweets. My Facebook Live stuff blew up a couple times. Yeah, it's really the fans are really into it, and it's really good to see them get rewarded for this because, like I wrote a story last Sunday about a couple of people who had passed away before they were able to see this, and they're not the only two. I mean, there's probably hundreds, if not thousands, of people who lost family members, before they could see this day. And so, I'm really happy that the Eagles were able to do it for them.
Doug Pederson said today, this team is inked in Philadelphia Eagles history forever. And they get their first Super Bowl championship. Dave Weinberg from the Press of Atlantic City. Of course, longtime Eagles beat writer here on the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. By the way, before we let you run, Corey Clement, how about his role in this game? I mean, that was another thing, the fact that these unheralded guys had such big roles. I mean, here's a kid that many people didn't even think was going to make the team.
No, I mean, when he got there, he came out of class pros, everybody knows, and he got the training camp. Everybody's like, oh, okay, he's got a chance to make the practice squad. That would be a good developmental player. But, he turns from that into arguably – not arguably, definitely one of the key players in the Super Bowl. So, that's like typical of the entire team, though. They had like all these unsung guys came out from nowhere, and Jake Elliott was on the Bengals practice squad. Kenyon Barner was surfing in California somewhere, and Corey comes out as an undrafted free agent. But it seems like whenever they needed somebody to come up and step up and make a great contribution, it was those guys who did it.
Good stuff. All right, Dave, always great talking throughout the Eagles season. When news happens in the offseason, of course, we will check up with Dave's coverage as well and check him out at the Press of Atlantic City. Thanks, pal.
Thanks, Dave.
Oh, thanks, Mike. Thanks, Sean. I really appreciate your help this year. It was a fun ride.